In the introduction to this module, I announced we would be looking at future evolution. Indeed, in the fourth lecture, we will look at how humans may make future ecosystems evolve in an increasingly urbanized world. But first, in this lecture, we will look at our own evolution. We often hear the claim that humans have stopped evolving, but in Module 1 we already saw that, in fact, natural selection is still shaping our gene pool by selection for genes that allow resistance to HIV, for example. In this lecture, we will delve a bit further into our ongoing evolution. Of course, we have to remind ourselves that evolution does not have a goal. An evolutionary change is the result of selection in previous generations. And since we cannot know what selection pressures the future will bring, we also cannot know in which direction evolution will take us. But we can still do some educated evolutionary speculation. The reason that people often claim that humans have ceased evolving is because it may seem that in our modern day, natural selection has stopped. With improved healthcare and safety, most people these days live long and have children. And genes for diseases that we die from after we have reproduced cannot be touched by selection. But this also means that genes that make us more susceptible to disease, which previously would be selected away by premature deaths, will be on the rise. And this is also a form of evolution. After all, evolution is just any change in allele frequency. Modern genome research shows this kind of evolution in action. The 150,000 British genomes that have been scanned in the UK Biobank project show an increase over the past half century in a nicotine receptor allele. People who carry this allele are more likely to take up smoking and to die young from smoking-related illnesses. With smoking habits declining compared with the 1950s and 1960s, the selection on this gene has lessened and it has increased over the time of just 1 or 2 generations. What other evolutionary effects might we expect from our current thriving and expanding human population? One thing we could do is look for trends over long periods of time. Brain size, for example, has increased steadily in human evolution over the past few million years. Clearly, large brains have been universally beneficial for a long time, and it seems logical to expect that our brain size will increase even further. But perhaps our brain cannot do so because of the kinds of limitations that we talked about in the previous module. Trade-offs, for example, or the lack of genes for even larger brains. A trade-off could be the size of the birth canal in women. A big-brained baby has a large head and is perhaps unable to pass through its mother's pelvis. There are several possible ways around this potential trade-off. First, increased hip circumference in women could evolve as well. And sure enough, in another British genome sequencing project called UK10K, researchers found evidence that genes for hip size in women have been selected over the past few millennia. In the course materials you can read exactly how they figured this out. A second possible way around the trade-off would be our unique human ability of developing technology. Caesarean sections are still rising, and they could be the key to allowing big-brained babies that otherwise would have died to be born. Another possible obstacle to further increase of our brain size is lack of genetic variation. If there are no genes floating around in the human gene pool that code for bigger brains, then evolution will come to a halt. But we have to remember that the chance on the right mutation depends on population size. The more people, the more mutants. Since most steps in our brain evolution have been taken when the human population was very small, it's unlikely that the current 7 billion persons do not contain the right mutations. And there's a more general reason why the current huge population size may be very important for our evolution: sexual selection. Many researchers believe that eye color and hair color and pattern, but also personality traits such as creativity and perhaps brain size itself, have evolved via sexual selection. As you may remember from Module 1, the strength of sexual selection depends on population density. The more potential partners you meet, the more possibility there is for selecting favorite characteristics. In our past, when people lived in sparse, small groups, most people only met a few potential partners during their lifetime. Today, in the dense cities that most people live in, we meet hundreds of potential mates each day. That, and the increased likelihood on new mutations, may mean that rather than a dead point in our evolution, today may actually be a crucial stage in the future evolution of our species. So in this lecture, we've been using our powers of evolutionary thinking to speculate on the future evolution of our own species. I've suggested that sexual selection may be an important force in that respect. Do you dare to speculate what the effect might be of increased sexual selection on the evolution of our bodies and our minds? In the next lecture, we will see how our human actions influence the evolution of the other species that we share our environment with.